Just think positive. If that advice actually worked, the self-help industry would have collapsed decades ago. You can't override negative thought patterns with forced positivity. The brain doesn't work that way. Research consistently shows that thought suppression and positive affirmations used without deeper cognitive work produce minimal lasting change. What actually works is something harder and more honest. Learning to identify the thought structures that are running you. Understanding where they came from, and systematically replacing them with something built on truth rather than fear. That's not simple, but it's real, and this audiobook walks you through every step of it. Like this, subscribe and share it. Let's replace bad advice with what actually works. Chapter 1: The Invisible Driver. There is a force running your life right now, and it's not your boss, not your circumstances, not the economy, and not even the people around you. It's quieter than that. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply operates, shaping your decisions, your reactions, your habits, and ultimately your future. That force is your thoughts. Most people walk through life believing they are in control, but they are not. They are reacting to old beliefs, automatic patterns, and internal narratives that were built years ago. You wake up thinking you chose your mood, your confidence, your level of effort. But in reality, your mind handed those to you before your feet even touched the ground. Imagine waking up in the morning already feeling behind. No real reason, nothing urgent, but there's a quiet pressure in your chest. You check your phone, scroll for a few minutes, compare your life to someone else's highlight reel, and suddenly your day has a tone. That tone wasn't chosen, it was assigned, and from that moment on every decision is filtered through it. You hesitate to take action. You second-guess yourself in conversations. You delay something important. By the end of the day, you feel like life just happened to you again. But here's the truth most people avoid. Your thoughts are not just influencing your life, they are running it. Think about a time when you felt unstoppable, confident, focused, decisive. You didn't suddenly become a different person physically. Nothing external magically changed overnight. What changed was your internal dialogue. The way you spoke to yourself shifted, and suddenly your actions followed. Now think about a time when everything felt heavy, when even small tasks seemed overwhelming. Again, nothing dramatically changed outside. The shift happened inside your mind. This is the invisible driver. Your thoughts create your emotions drive your actions produce your results, and your results reinforce your thoughts. It's a loop. And if you don't take control of it, it will run on autopilot for the rest of your life. Most people never question their thoughts. They assume that because a thought appears it must be true. They treat every internal voice as authority. But that voice, it's often outdated, conditioned, and completely unreliable. It was shaped by your upbringing, your environment, your past failures, and the opinions of others. So somewhere along the way you absorbed beliefs about what you're capable of, what you deserve, and how the world works. And now those beliefs are playing on repeat. I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. What if I fail? This is just who I am. These aren't facts. They are programs. And the most dangerous thing about them is how normal they feel. A man walks into a meeting and stays quiet even though he has an idea that could change everything, not because he lacks intelligence, but because a thought whispers, "Don't speak up, you might sound stupid." He obeys that thought, And just like that, an opportunity disappears. A woman stays in a job she hates for years, not because she lacks skill, but because a thought tells her you should be grateful, don't risk it. That thought becomes her cage. These aren't rare situations. This is everyday life for millions of people. But there's a moment, a critical turning point, where everything can change. It's the moment you realize that you are not your thoughts, you are the one hearing them. That separation is power, because once you see that your thoughts are not commands, they are just suggestions, you create space. And in that space you gain the ability to choose. At first it feels strange. You notice a negative thought, and instead of automatically believing it, you pause, you question it, you challenge it. Is this actually true? Is this helping me? Who would I be without this thought? That pause is where control begins. But make no mistake, this is not easy. Your brain is designed for efficiency, not growth. It wants to conserve energy, stick to familiar patterns, and avoid discomfort. That's why your default thoughts often lean toward doubt, fear, and limitation. Taking control means going against that default. It means deliberately choosing thoughts that serve you even when they feel unnatural at first. Instead of "I can't handle this," you choose "I'll figure it out." Instead of "I'm not ready," you choose "I'll grow into it." Instead of "this is too hard," you choose "this is making me stronger." These aren't empty affirmations, they are decisions, and decisions repeated consistently become beliefs. Here's where most people get it wrong. They wait to feel different before they think differently, but it works the other way around. You think differently first, and the feelings follow. Confidence is not something you wait for. It's something you practice through thought and action. Discipline is not a personality trait. It's a pattern of thinking that says, "I do what needs to be done regardless of how I feel." Every time you choose a stronger thought, you are rewiring your mind. Every time you act in alignment with that thought, you reinforce it. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. And subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Think of your mind like a steering wheel. If you let go, the car doesn't stop. It drifts, it reacts to the road, to the wind, to whatever comes its way. But when you grip that wheel, even if the road is rough, you control the direction. Right now, most people are drifting. They consume whatever shows up in front of them: news, social media, opinions, negativity. And all of it feeds their thoughts, which then shape their reality. But the moment you become intentional about what you allow into your mind, everything shifts. You start paying attention to your inputs, what you read, what you watch, who you listen to, because you understand that every input plants a seed, and those seeds grow into thoughts. You also start paying attention to your self-talk, the quiet conversations you have with yourself throughout the day. Are they building you up or breaking you down? Because no matter what anyone else says, the voice you hear the most is your own. And that voice is either your greatest ally or your worst enemy. Taking back control doesn't mean eliminating negative thoughts completely. That's unrealistic. They will still show up. But now, instead of accepting them, you evaluate them. You become the gatekeeper. You decide which thoughts stay and which ones go. Over time, something powerful happens. The thoughts that once controlled you lose their grip. They still knock, but you don't have to let them in. And as you strengthen this ability, your life begins to change in very real, tangible ways. You take more action, you speak up more often, you pursue opportunities instead of avoiding them. You recover faster from setbacks, not because life got easier, but because you got stronger internally. This is where real self-development begins, not with external changes, but with internal awareness. Because once you control your thoughts, you control your responses. And once you control your responses, you control your direction, and direction determines destiny. So as you move forward from this moment, start paying attention. What thoughts are running your day? What patterns keep repeating? What beliefs are shaping your decisions without you even realizing it? And most importantly, if your current thoughts are creating your current life, what new thoughts will you choose to create a different one? Chapter 2: Breaking the Autopilot. You've already seen the truth most people never stop long enough to recognize. Your thoughts are not just passing ideas. They are the force directing your choices, your behavior, and the results you live with every day. And once you realize that you are not your thoughts but the one observing them, something shifts. That separation gives you power, but awareness alone is not enough. Now comes the real work, because noticing the driver is one thing, taking the wheel is another. Autopilot is comfortable, it's predictable, it requires no effort. That's why most people stay there even when it's clearly not working. The mind clings to familiar patterns even if those patterns lead to frustration, stagnation, or regret. It doesn't care if the outcome is good or bad, it only cares if it's known. That's why change feels uncomfortable. Not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. Think about how you respond when something unexpected happens. A plan falls apart, someone criticizes you, you make a mistake. In that moment, your reaction feels instant, almost automatic. Maybe you shut down, maybe you get defensive, maybe you avoid the situation altogether. That reaction wasn't chosen in real time, it was programmed. At some point in your life you learned that response. Maybe it protected you once, maybe it helped you cope. But now it's running without your permission, showing up in situations where it no longer serves you. This is autopilot in action. And here's the problem: autopilot doesn't lead to growth, it leads to repetition. If you keep thinking the same thoughts, you will keep making the same decisions. And if you keep making the same decisions, your life will stay exactly where it is. Breaking autopilot requires interruption. You have to disrupt the pattern before you can replace it. That starts with awareness, but it deepens with intention. The next time you feel a familiar reaction rising, pause, not for long, just long enough to notice it. There's a moment, small but powerful, where you can catch yourself before the pattern completes. It might feel like this. Your mind starts saying, "This isn't going to work." Normally you'd believe it and pull back. But now you recognize it, you see it for what it is. A habitual thought, not a fact. In that moment you have a choice. You can follow the pattern, or you can break it. Breaking it doesn't mean forcing yourself into unrealistic positivity. It means choosing a response that moves you forward instead of holding you back. Instead of withdrawing, you stay engaged. Instead of staying silent, you speak. Instead of avoiding, you act. At first this will feel unnatural, even uncomfortable. That's a sign you're doing it right. Growth doesn't feel like comfort, it feels like resistance. Consider someone who wants to become more confident in their career. On autopilot, they might avoid speaking in meetings, pass on opportunities, and stay in the background. Their thoughts tell them it's safer that way. But the moment they begin interrupting that pattern, everything changes. They feel the fear, but they speak anyway. They doubt themselves, but they take the opportunity anyway. They feel uncertain, but they move forward anyway. That's not confidence yet, that's courage. And courage repeated consistently becomes confidence. This is how you reprogram your mind, not through wishful thinking, but through deliberate action aligned with stronger thoughts. Your brain is constantly learning from what you do. Every action sends a signal. This is who I am. This is how I operate. When you act differently, even in small ways, you start rewriting that identity. But here's where most people sabotage themselves. They wait for big moments to change. They think, when the opportunity is right, I'll step up. When I feel ready, I'll go for it. When things settle down, I'll start. That moment rarely comes. Real change happens in the small everyday decisions, the ones that seem insignificant at the time. Choosing to get up when your mind says stay in bed. Choosing to focus when your mind wants distraction. Choosing to follow through when your mind suggests quitting. These moments don't feel dramatic, but they are powerful because they are consistent, and consistency is what reshapes your thinking over time. Another critical piece of breaking autopilot is controlling your environment, not just physically but mentally. What you surround yourself with influences your thoughts more than you realize. If you constantly expose yourself to negativity, doubt, and distraction, your mind absorbs it. It becomes the background noise of your thinking. But if you intentionally feed your mind with ideas that challenge you, strengthen you, and push you forward, your internal dialogue begins to shift. This doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending everything is perfect. It means choosing inputs that build you instead of weaken you. Pay attention to what you consume. Conversations, content, environments, they all leave an imprint. And over time, those imprints shape your default thoughts. Breaking autopilot also requires accountability. Not from others but from yourself. You have to be honest about your patterns. Where do you hesitate? Where do you hold back? Where do you default to comfort instead of growth? These are not weaknesses to hide. They are patterns to address, because once you identify them, you can start to interrupt them. And every time you interrupt a limiting pattern, you weaken it. Every time you replace it with a stronger response, you build something new. This is not an overnight transformation. It's a process, a daily practice. Some days you'll catch yourself early and respond differently. Other days you'll fall back into old patterns and realize it later. That's part of it. The goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. Each time you become aware, you shorten the gap between reaction and control. Each time you choose differently, you strengthen your ability to do it again. Over time, what once felt forced becomes natural. You start responding with intention instead of impulse. You start thinking in ways that support your growth instead of limit it. And eventually your new patterns become your default. That's when your life begins to shift in a meaningful way. Because now, instead of your thoughts running you, you are directing them. And that direction shows up everywhere. In how you handle pressure, in how you approach opportunities, in how you recover from setbacks, you become more steady, more focused, more deliberate, not because life got easier, but because you stopped operating unconsciously. This is the difference between drifting and driving. Drifting is passive, it reacts. It accepts whatever comes. Driving is active, it chooses direction. It adjusts when needed. It moves with purpose. Right now you have both options available to you at any moment. The question is not whether you can change. It's whether you're willing to interrupt what's familiar in order to create something better. Because every time you let autopilot take over, you reinforce the past. But every time you take control, even in a small way, you create a new future. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. And subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. So as you move through your day, start noticing the patterns that repeat without your permission. Where are you reacting instead of choosing? Where are you staying comfortable instead of growing? And in the next moment, when you feel that familiar pull toward autopilot, will you follow it again, or will you interrupt it and take control? Chapter 3: Rewriting the Inner Script. By now you've seen how your thoughts quietly take control and how autopilot keeps you locked in patterns that repeat without your permission. You've started to recognize those moments where a reaction isn't really a choice but a habit playing itself out. And you've seen that interruption is the first step toward taking your power back. But noticing and interrupting is only half the process. If you don't replace the old script, the mind will return to it. Your mind is always telling a story. Not occasionally, constantly. From the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, there is a narration running in the background. It explains what's happening, what it means, and what you should do next. It interprets your past, judges your present, and predicts your future. And here's the part most people overlook: that story is not fixed. It's written by you even if you didn't realize you were the one holding the pen. Think about how two people can go through the exact same experience and walk away with completely different conclusions. One person sees a setback as proof they're not capable. Another sees it as a lesson that sharpens them. Same event, different story, completely different outcome. The event didn't define them. The meaning they assigned to it did. This is where your power sits. If your current story is built on limitation, doubt, and fear, then your life will reflect that. But if you begin to rewrite that story with intention, everything starts to shift. Rewriting your inner script is not about lying to yourself or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing interpretations that move you forward instead of holding you back. Let's take failure as an example. On autopilot, failure often triggers thoughts like, "I'm not good at this," or "I knew this wouldn't work." That interpretation leads to hesitation, avoidance, and eventually giving up. But what if the script changed? What if failure became feedback? What if instead of asking, "Why am I not good enough?" you asked, "What can I learn from this?" That single shift changes everything. Now, instead of shrinking, you grow. Instead of stopping, you adjust. Instead of reinforcing doubt, you build resilience. This is not a small change. This is a complete shift in how you experience life. Another example is how you view effort. Some people see effort as a sign that something is wrong. If it's hard, they assume it's not meant for them. That belief keeps them stuck in comfort, avoiding anything that challenges them. But a different script says effort is a sign of growth. That discomfort you feel when you're pushing yourself, that's not a warning, that's progress. When you adopt that mindset, you stop resisting difficulty and start leaning into it. You begin to understand that anything worth building will require energy, focus, and persistence. And suddenly what used to feel like a burden starts to feel like a path. Rewriting your script also means becoming aware of the labels you've accepted about yourself. I'm not a disciplined person. I'm bad with money. I'm just not confident. These labels feel like facts because they've been repeated so many times, but they are not permanent truths. They are conclusions drawn from past behavior, and past behavior can change. The moment you decide that a label no longer serves you, you can begin to replace it. Instead of "I'm not disciplined," you shift to "I'm learning to be consistent." Instead of "I'm bad with money," you shift to "I'm improving how I manage my finances." Instead of "I'm not confident," you shift to "I'm building confidence through action." These aren't just words, they are directions. Your mind follows the story you tell it. If the story says you're limited, your actions will match that. If the story says you're growing, your actions will begin to align with that. But here's the key. The new script must be backed by action. You can't think your way into a new identity without behaving like it. If you tell yourself you're becoming disciplined, then you follow through on small commitments. If you say you're building confidence, then you take small risks. If you believe you're improving, then you show up consistently. Action is what makes the new script real. And at first there will be tension. The old script will try to pull you back. It will say this isn't you, or you're just pretending. That's normal. That's the old identity trying to maintain control. But every time you act in alignment with the new script, you weaken the old one. Over time, the tension fades. The new story becomes familiar, and eventually it becomes your default. Another powerful way to rewrite your inner script is through the questions you ask yourself. Most people ask disempowering questions without realizing it. Why does this always happen to me? Why can't I figure this out? What's wrong with me? These questions don't lead to solutions, they reinforce frustration. But when you change the questions, you change the direction of your thinking. What's one thing I can do to improve this? What can I learn from this situation? How can I handle this better next time? Now your mind is searching for answers that move you forward. And questions are powerful because your brain is wired to respond to them. It will look for evidence to support whatever you ask. So if you ask better questions, you get better answers, and better answers lead to better decisions. Another element of rewriting your script is visualization, not as fantasy, but as preparation. When you mentally rehearse how you want to think, act, and respond, you create familiarity. You reduce uncertainty. You build confidence before the moment even arrives. An athlete doesn't just train physically, they visualize the performance. They see themselves executing under pressure. You can do the same in your daily life. Before a challenging conversation, visualize yourself staying calm and clear. Before an important opportunity, see yourself showing up with confidence. Before facing a fear, imagine yourself moving through it. This isn't about guaranteeing an outcome. It's about preparing your mind to respond differently. Because when the moment comes, your mind will default to what feels familiar. And if you've rehearsed a stronger response, that's what you'll lean into. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. As you continue this process, you'll start to notice something important. Your external results begin to change, not because the world suddenly became easier, but because you are interpreting and responding to it differently. Opportunities that once felt intimidating now feel possible. Challenges that once felt overwhelming now feel manageable. Setbacks that once stopped you now teach you. This is the power of rewriting your inner script. You are no longer reacting to life with old programming. You are engaging with it using intentional thinking. And that changes everything. Because when your thoughts support your growth instead of limiting it, your actions become stronger, more consistent, and more aligned with where you want to go. So as you move forward, pay attention to the story you're telling yourself. Is it building you or holding you back? Is it based on old patterns or new possibilities? And if your current script is creating your current life, what new story are you ready to write? And what actions will you take today to make it real? Chapter 4: Discipline over Distraction. You've already uncovered how your thoughts shape your reality, how autopilot keeps you stuck in repetition, and how rewriting your inner script begins to shift your direction. You've started to see that change doesn't come from waiting but from choosing differently in real time. Now it's time to confront one of the biggest forces working against you every single day. Not your past, not your limitations, but your distractions. Because even with awareness and a stronger internal script, none of it matters if you can't stay focused long enough to act on it. Distraction is not just about your phone buzzing or a notification pulling your attention away. It's deeper than that. Distraction is anything that pulls you away from what matters most, especially when it's uncomfortable to stay. And in today's world, distraction is everywhere. You wake up and reach for your phone before your mind is even fully awake. You scroll through headlines, messages, updates. Before you've had a chance to think your own thoughts, you've already consumed dozens of other people's priorities. That sets the tone. Your focus becomes fragmented, your attention becomes reactive, and the day starts to slip into a pattern where you are constantly responding instead of creating. This is not accidental. The modern environment is designed to capture your attention, hold it, and keep you coming back. Every app, every platform, every piece of content, they compete for one thing: your focus. And the more your focus is scattered, the harder it becomes to build anything meaningful. Because focus is not just a skill, it's a requirement for growth. Think about anything you've ever improved at. Whether it was learning a skill, building a career, or developing your mindset, it required sustained attention. It required time spent in concentration, pushing through discomfort, staying with the process even when it wasn't exciting. A distraction breaks that process. It gives you quick hits of stimulation that feel productive but don't move you forward. You check something, respond to something, consume something, and it feels like you're doing something. But at the end of the day, nothing has really changed. This is how people stay busy without making progress. Discipline is the opposite of that. Discipline is the ability to stay with what matters even when your mind is pulling you elsewhere. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. There will always be moments when you don't feel like doing the work, when your mind suggests something easier, something more comfortable, something more immediately rewarding. That's the test. Because the version of you that stays on track in those moments is the version that builds results. Think of discipline as a filter between your thoughts and your actions. Your mind might say, check your phone. Discipline says, not right now. Your mind might say, this is too hard. A discipline says, keep going. Your mind might say, you can do this later. Discipline says, do it now. This is where control becomes real. It's not just about choosing better thoughts, it's about backing those thoughts with behavior, especially when it's inconvenient. One of the biggest mistakes people make is relying on motivation. Motivation feels good, but it's inconsistent. It comes and goes based on how you feel, what's happening around you, and your level of energy. If you only act when you feel motivated, you'll only make progress when conditions are perfect. And conditions are rarely perfect. Discipline removes that dependency. It says, I act because I decided to, not because I feel like it. That shift changes everything, because now your progress is not tied to your mood, it's tied to your commitment. Another important piece of discipline is clarity. You can't stay focused on what matters if you don't know what matters. Too many people move through their day reacting to whatever shows up without a clear direction. They handle tasks, respond to requests, check off items, but they never step back and ask, is this actually moving me forward? Without clarity, distraction wins by default. So you need to define what matters. What are the few things that, if you made consistent progress on them, would actually change your life? Not everything, just the critical few. Once you identify those, your job becomes protecting time and energy for them. That means setting boundaries, saying no to things that don't align, limiting time on activities that drain your focus, creating space where you can think and work without interruption. This is not about isolating yourself from the world. It's about being intentional with your attention, because your attention is one of your most valuable resources. Where you place it determines what grows. If you constantly give it to distractions, you strengthen your ability to be distracted. If you give it to focused work, you strengthen your ability to concentrate. And over time, that ability compounds. You become someone who can sit down, lock in, and execute. That's a competitive advantage in a world full of noise. Another powerful way to build discipline is through structure. Not rigid, overwhelming schedules, but simple systems that reduce decision-making. When you know what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, you remove the mental debate. There's no should I start now, or maybe later. It's already decided. That reduces friction. And the less friction you have, the easier it is to follow through. Start small. Choose a specific time for focused work. Remove obvious distractions during that time. Commit to staying with the task even when it feels difficult. At first, your mind will resist. It will look for reasons to stop, to switch tasks, to check something else. That's normal. But every time you stay, even for a few more minutes, you strengthen your discipline. You prove to yourself that you are in control. And that proof builds confidence, because confidence doesn't just come from thinking differently. It comes from seeing yourself follow through, from knowing that when you say you'll do something, you actually do it. That's where self-trust is built. And self-trust is the foundation of everything. Without it, your goals feel distant, your plans feel uncertain, your potential feels out of reach. With it, you move differently. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop making excuses. You start executing. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. And subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. As you move forward, start paying attention to where your attention goes. How often are you pulled away from what matters? How often do you choose comfort over progress? And in the moments where distraction calls your name, will you follow it, or will you stay disciplined and continue building the life you said you wanted? Chapter 5: Emotional Control is Power. You've seen how your thoughts shape your life, how autopilot keeps you stuck, how rewriting your inner script gives you direction, and how discipline protects your focus from constant distraction. You've started to recognize that real control doesn't come from the outside, but from how you think and act in each moment. But there is one more layer that determines whether all of this holds or falls apart under pressure: your emotions. Because no matter how strong your mindset is, if your emotions control you, your life will feel unstable. Emotions are powerful. They can elevate you, drive you, push you forward, but they can also cloud your judgment, distort your thinking, and lead you into decisions you regret. The problem isn't that emotions exist. The problem is when they take over without your awareness. Most people don't realize how often they are being driven by how they feel in the moment. They feel frustrated, so they react. They feel tired, so they stop. They feel uncertain, so they hesitate. And each of those emotional reactions shapes their behavior, which shapes their results. Think about a time when you made a decision in the heat of the moment. Maybe you said something you didn't mean. Maybe you walked away from something important. Maybe you avoided a situation because it felt uncomfortable. In that moment, your emotions were in control, and afterward, when the intensity faded, you saw it differently. You realized you could have handled it better. That's the gap between emotional reaction and intentional response. Closing that gap is where your power is. Emotional control doesn't mean suppressing what you feel. It doesn't mean pretending you're not affected. It means creating space between the feeling and the action. It means recognizing the emotion without letting it dictate your next move. When frustration rises, you notice it, but you don't immediately react. When fear shows up, you acknowledge it, but you don't let it stop you. When doubt creeps in, you see it, but you don't follow it. That space, even if it's just a few seconds, is enough to shift everything, because in that space you can choose, and choice is control. One of the most important things to understand is that emotions are temporary. They feel intense in the moment, but they pass. The problem is when you make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. You quit something because it felt hard today. You avoid an opportunity because it felt uncomfortable in the moment. You speak out of anger and damage something that mattered. All because the emotion felt urgent. But urgency is not always truth. Just because something feels strong doesn't mean it should guide your actions. This is where discipline and emotional control come together. Discipline says, do what needs to be done. Emotional control says, don't let how you feel in this moment derail that. Together they create stability. Another key part of emotional control is understanding your triggers. Everyone has them: certain situations, certain people, certain patterns, things that cause a strong emotional reaction. Maybe it's criticism, maybe it's feeling ignored, maybe it's pressure or uncertainty. When those triggers are activated, your mind and body react automatically. If you're not aware of them, they control you. But when you start identifying them, you gain an advantage. You can prepare. You can recognize the pattern as it begins instead of after it's already taken over. For example, if you know that criticism triggers defensiveness, you can catch that reaction early. Instead of immediately pushing back, you pause. You listen. You evaluate. You respond with intention instead of emotion. That's growth. Another important shift is how you interpret your emotions. Most people see uncomfortable emotions as something to avoid: stress, fear, anxiety, frustration. They want to get rid of them as quickly as possible. But what if those emotions were signals instead of obstacles? Stress can signal that something matters. Fear can signal that you're stepping outside your comfort zone. Frustration can signal that there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be. When you start viewing emotions this way, they become information, not something to run from, but something to understand. This doesn't mean you enjoy discomfort. It means you stop being controlled by it. You allow it to exist without letting it dictate your behavior. One of the most practical ways to build emotional control is through slowing down your responses. In a world that moves fast, reacting quickly is often seen as strength, but real strength is being able to pause, to take a and to step back for a moment, to choose your response instead of letting it choose you. This is especially important in conversations. When emotions rise, words come out faster, sharper, less controlled. But when you slow down, you create space for clarity. You listen better, you think more clearly, you respond more effectively, and over time people begin to notice. You become someone who is steady, not easily shaken, not easily pulled into unnecessary conflict. That's a form of power that doesn't rely on volume or force, it relies on control. Another way to strengthen emotional control is by building resilience. Resilience is your ability to handle discomfort without breaking your direction. Life will challenge you, plans will fail, people will disappoint you, situations will test your patience. That's not something you can eliminate, but you can decide how you respond to it. Instead of seeing challenges as setbacks, you see them as part of the process. Instead of letting frustration stop you, you use it as fuel to adjust and continue. Instead of letting emotions overwhelm you, you move through them with intention. Resilience is not about being unaffected. It's about staying committed despite being affected. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. And subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. As you continue building this skill, you'll notice something important. Your life becomes more stable, not because challenges disappear, but because you handle them differently. You don't get pulled into every emotional wave. You don't make impulsive decisions that set you back. You don't let temporary feelings define your long-term direction. Instead, you stay grounded. You think clearly under pressure. You act with intention even when it's difficult. You recover faster when things don't go your way, and that consistency compounds, because while others are reacting, you are responding. While others are being driven by emotion, you are directing your actions. That's what separates people who stay stuck from those who move forward. So as you move through your day, start paying attention to your emotional patterns. What triggers you? How do you usually respond? And in the next moment when a strong emotion rises, will you let it control your actions? Or will you pause, create space, and choose a response that aligns with the life you're building? Chapter 6: Take Your Life Back. You've seen how your thoughts quietly take control, how autopilot repeats patterns, how rewriting your inner script shifts your direction, how discipline protects your focus, and how emotional control stabilizes your actions under pressure. Piece by piece you've uncovered the truth that your life is not being shaped by chance, but by how you think, how you respond, and what you choose to do consistently. Now everything comes down to one decision. Are you going to apply it, or are you going to drift back into what's familiar? Because understanding this changes nothing unless you act on it. There is a moment that separates people who transform their lives from those who stay stuck. It's not a moment of motivation. It's not a burst of inspiration. It's a quiet internal decision where you stop negotiating with the old version of yourself. You stop waiting, you stop hesitating, you stop giving control to thoughts, distractions, and emotions that don't serve you. And you decide clearly and firmly that you are taking your life back. That decision doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't need perfect conditions. It just needs commitment. Because once that decision is made, your actions begin to change, not dramatically all at once, but consistently over time. You wake up and you notice your thoughts instead of being pulled by them. You interrupt patterns instead of repeating them. You choose better responses instead of reacting automatically. You stay focused instead of giving in to distraction. You hold steady instead of being controlled by emotions. And as simple as those actions sound, they are powerful, because they compound. One better decision leads to another. One disciplined action leads to progress. One moment of control leads to momentum, and momentum changes everything. Think about where you are right now, not where you want to be, not where you think you should be, where you actually are. Your current reality is the result of patterns, patterns of thinking, patterns of behavior, patterns of response. Nothing about it is random, which means something else is also true. If you change the patterns, you change the outcome. That's not theory, that's cause and effect. But here's where honesty matters. Changing patterns is not comfortable. It requires you to do things when you don't feel like it, to think differently when it feels unnatural, to act with discipline when distraction is easier, to stay steady when emotions are pulling you in another direction. That's the price, and most people avoid paying it. They go back to what's familiar. They let their thoughts run unchecked. They fall into old habits. They tell themselves they'll start tomorrow, and tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next month, and nothing changes, not because they can't change, but because they didn't commit. You are not in that position anymore. You've seen too much. You understand too clearly what's happening inside your own mind. So now the responsibility is yours. Every thought you allow, every action you take, every response you choose, it's all shaping your direction. And that means every moment is an opportunity to take control, an opportunity to reinforce who you're becoming, an opportunity to move forward instead of staying stuck. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. You need to win the moments in front of you, the next decision, the next action, the next response. That's where change lives. When your mind says this doesn't matter, that's the moment it matters most. When your mind says skip it, that's the moment to follow through. When your mind says stay comfortable, that's the moment to push forward. Because those small moments are not small, they are defining. They are the building blocks of your identity, and your identity determines your results. There will be days when it feels easy, when everything aligns and you move forward without resistance. But there will also be days when it feels heavy, days when your thoughts are louder, when distractions are stronger, when emotions are harder to manage. Those are the days that matter most, because anyone can stay on track when it's easy. But the person who stays consistent when it's difficult is the one who creates real change. That's the standard, not perfection, not constant motivation, consistency under pressure. And every time you meet that standard, even in a small way, you strengthen your control, you build self-trust. You prove to yourself that you are not controlled by your thoughts, your environment, or your emotions. You are directing them. That realization is powerful because it shifts how you see yourself. You're no longer someone trying to figure it out. You're someone who takes action. You're someone who follows through. You're someone who builds. And once that identity starts to take hold, your behavior aligns with it. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" You start saying, "I do this." That's ownership, and ownership changes everything. It changes how you approach challenges. It changes how you respond to setbacks. It changes how you carry yourself in every area of your life, because now you're not waiting for circumstances to improve. You're creating improvement through your actions. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. As this comes to a close, understand this clearly. Your thoughts will still show up, distractions will still exist, emotions will still rise. None of that disappears. What changes is you. You become aware. You become intentional. You become disciplined. You become steady. And through that you take control. This is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming responsible for your own direction. Because at the end of the day, no one else is living your life. No one else is thinking your thoughts. No one else is making your decisions. No one else is responsible for your outcomes. That responsibility is yours. And that's not a burden, that's freedom. Because if your life is shaped by your patterns, then you have the ability to reshape it. Starting now, not later, not when it's easier, not when everything lines up. Now, so as you move forward from this moment, carry this with you. Pay attention to your thoughts and choose the ones that serve you. Interrupt patterns that hold you back and replace them with ones that move you forward. Stay disciplined when distraction tries to pull you away. Control your emotions so they don't control your actions. And most importantly, follow through, again and again, because your life is not decided in one moment, it's built in thousands of small ones, and every one of those moments is a chance to take your power back. So when the next challenge shows up, when the next doubt creeps in, when the next distraction calls your name, who are you going to be in that moment? Will you go back to autopilot, or will you take control? Will you follow old patterns, or will you create new ones? Will you let your thoughts run your life, or will you finally take them back and build something stronger, more focused, and more intentional with everything you've learned?